Explorer, you've arrived at the threshold of an epic journey where self-love meets fitness. Gather your courage as we seek to challenge the limits of our bodies, become mentally resilient, and learn to cherish ourselves for the beautiful individuals we are. Along the way, we'll be joined by incredible mentors in the pole and fitness community who will share their wealth of knowledge to help you blossom. This is the Pole Adventures podcast, and your adventure starts now. Welcome, explorers, to another episode of Pole Adventures. I'm your host, Paris, an eternally struggling pole dancer, here to bring you the wisdom of Britta Paulin. Britta is a strength and flexibility coach with an incredible background in pole, circus, and the performing arts industry, with multiple gold medals, titles, and world-renowned awards under her belt. She specializes in anatomy, physiology, and psychology, which is why she's the perfect person for today's topic, how to get in tune with your body through movement intention. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for that intro. I'm super psyched on this topic.
I'd love to firstly, I'd love for you to tell us a bit about your pole adventure. What was your why for pole?
Yeah, so I started pole in 2012, and I started self-taught because I was dancing in the club, so that was where my in was to the pole world. Did that for a couple of years and kind of faded out of that and got into aerial because that was all that there was in the town I was living in. So I knew I still wanted to perform, but I just didn't have it in me to work in the club anymore, so transitioned into that and ended up auditioning for the circus troupe that was based out of the studio in town, performed with them for a long time, did like the whole festival circuit thing, super fun, met a lot of friends that I'm still really close with, circus family. And from there, I still really missed pole. It was my first love, and I feel like my body interacts with that apparatus the best. So I petitioned to put poles in the already existing aerial studio and went and got certified through the elevated training, which is awesome. If you're looking for a pole training, highly recommend it. And started teaching and started figuring this thing out in terms of not being self-taught anymore. I was still the only instructor, so I was kind of like leading the way in that sense. And that kind of got old. I really wanted to live somewhere where I had people to follow and learn from consistently instead of just doing traincations. So I moved to LA to pursue performing arts and have been doing that. Did that for a handful of years and got a lot of shows and competitions and all that stuff under my belt, and really informative in terms of like where I was going with my career, because I knew I really loved this. And then we took a hard turn with COVID, and I started doing the cross-training thing for people online. One, because I already had a day job working as a personal trainer in the gym, and so I had that background going for me. I knew a lot about cross-training and anatomy and physiology and how to coach people through wanting their bodies to do very specific things. But then COVID really just exacerbated the need for performing artists to do that, and we are where we are now. So
yeah, that's awesome. You've had a huge background in fitness and the circus arts, but for our fellow nervous beginners, do you have a embarrassing pole moment to share from you?
I would say that my embarrassing pole moment is from what I was just talking about, like going to go get my teacher certification and not knowing what anything was, like none of the moves. And I chose to do this pole teacher training in LA at the Vertitude, which attracts a lot of like pro track performers, like people that do this stuff for a living, that kind of thing. So all the people in my teacher training were like super experienced and were like hardly needed to be there in terms of the actual training. And I came from Montana, just like self-taught, kind of figuring it all out on my own. And I like to tell this story because like a lot of people compliment my movement style now and are like, oh, like I love how you move, and I love that you're strong and flexible and all of that. And I just always like to remind people that like you can totally show up in those spaces and know nothing. Like the language is just there to like help us like talk about this stuff better. But I just felt like so self-conscious being in that space and having these like pole stars come in to like do the teacher training, and everybody else in the teacher training was also like mini pole stars or actual pole stars. And I was like, what is a dip turn? Like, what is a fireman spin? And I'm sure you have different names for those.
Yeah,
just
we all
I know
have different names for everything.
Varies, which just, yeah, which further proves my point is that like, I was like so self-conscious in that space, and it felt really embarrassing to be in that situation with people that were super experienced and me like not knowing what anything was, or like even how to properly like climb the pole, because I just kind of like taught myself. And I just felt like really small and really inexperienced. And it just goes to show that like you kind of have to put yourself in those situations to learn like what's embarrassing for you and why. Like, does it actually matter?
So you didn't need to be like a certain level to teach?
No, I believe that the elevated training, you can come in if you're a beginner just wanting to learn like how to teach this stuff, especially like especially the level 1 training. It's really a lot of stuff that's on the floor that you would probably be learning like in the intro classes anyway. I think that they do recommend that you have like some sort of certain amount of classes or something before you start. But yeah, they didn't have any sort of prereqs for like what sort of level you should be in, which is true. It was more just my experience was like a lot of self-consciousness happening and a lot of just like judging myself.
I'm sure they were all self-conscious too. It's just hard to tell.
Is.
Yeah. So awesome. Yeah, let's. I would love for you to, let's kick us off by, maybe defining the concept of movement intention. Like, why is it important?
Yeah. So this concept came into my life really early in my dance career. When I was a kid, I've been in dance like forever, like a lot of performing arts experience. And I remember being at this like summer dance camp and seeing the older girls dancing and being like, oh, like that's how I want to show up. Like that's what I'm supposed to do, like with my movement. And I remember doing this like improv exercise and watching these women or these girls, moving with like so much embodiment. And I didn't know that that's what it was at the time, but I just knew I wanted to move how they were moving. So when it was our turn to do this improv exercise, I hopped up there and tried to mimic the moves that I saw them doing and was hoping that that was going to be the magic potion to becoming a good dancer. And it wasn't. I looked in the mirror and was like, oh, this is just me doing the same movement, but worse. And I couldn't figure out. It took me so long to realize what was going on and what they had that I didn't have. And now when I'm coaching clients through this and they say they want to gain more confidence, like they want to look better on stage, they want their moves to pop more for their competition, like that kind of stuff, I understand what they're saying. They're saying they want to move like those girls that I was trying to emulate at dance camp like all those years ago. And embodiment is really just our ability to create tension and space against nothing.
Yeah, so I guess how would you use that how would you start using that practically?
Yeah, so I know it seems really nebulous and abstract, but like everything else, it can totally be trained. One of the things I guide people to do if this is something that they want to start seeing on pole or on stage, that they start implementing this in their cross training, because the ability to create tension in space is such a game changer, not only for what you're going to see on stage, like once you're done with all the cross training aspects, but it also is something that if you start to think about this concept in your lifts and in your mobility drills and in your stretching, all that kind of stuff, it really levels up what you're getting out of your individual exercises as well. So you're getting better at the exercise just by having like more intention, more presence, and just being more aware of where your body is in space and creating more tension in space. You're getting better at the exercises, but also what you're getting out of the exercises is going to translate into your movement, because again, this concept of embodiment, just like any other aspect of performing arts, can be trained. So we just practice doing it outside of the studio. We practice doing it in the studio. There's a lot of cues and things you can work through depending on how you relate to it. For most people, it works pretty well to focus on feeling the resistance of the air as you move, or moving like you're moving through mud or honey, things like that. For people that like more visual things, I always encourage people to do a little bit of, yeah, like
so would you consider that like step one, or is there a...
So it really depends on how you interpret your movement. Like if you're really kinesthetic, like you respond really well to doing things and having the practice come from there, then those are really good options. Another really good option for step one, if you are somebody that responds more to like visual learning and the mud and the honey thing isn't enough for you, do a little bit of anatomical research, like know what your bones and your muscles and your tissues look like, so that when you're moving through space, you can really envision this stuff like stretching and contracting. And it makes such a big difference if you know like what's stretching and what's contracting and what's moving, if you're a visual learner, so that you can get to that step one of making your movement have a little bit more of that like it factor. To fully answer your question though, that would be step one. But then like step zero, I always tell people, is just going through the motions. Like you can't start lifting, learning a new exercise, learning a new combo, learning a new trick, whatever, a new choreo, and expect yourself to like look super embodied right away. Like there is going to be a season of just going through the motions and like knowing where to put your bones in space and
learn the thing first.
yeah, learn the thing and then like give it that it factor.
So after you're practicing moving through mud and stuff, then what?
Yeah, and so it really just depends on where you want to go with it. If you are happy with your movement and that's enough for you for how you feel like you're able to show up on stage and present your movement really well, and that's what you're happy with, then that's really it. But if you're someone who's like, this is my thing, like this is my thing that gives me that like oomph in my performing art, and I feel like I'm really good at progressing my movement intention and all of that, then you can start playing around with like somatics and thinking about like what comes up for you as you move, and it becomes more of like a therapy experience if that's what you personally want to get out of it, which is super fun also. I love playing with movement and using movement as like emotional expression, like personal expression.
How would you pursue that a bit more?
Oh man. So I did my undergrad for psychology, but we didn't cover any like dance therapy.
Yeah.
But I have been to a few movement seminars and things like that are essentially, they were centered around like movement meditation and stuff like that. So you can totally go that way with it if you're into it. And again, it's very like meditative and like notice what comes up in your body as you move style thing. Just as an example, something that we did, I'm not going to be able to remember when or where we were when we did this, but it was some sort of movement retreat, and we did an exercise where we were just laying on the floor, and the instructor put music on, and we were listening to what sort of pre-downloaded choreography we had in our body, and like how we would be moving if we were moving, but we were supposed to just be still on the floor, which is kind of way getting into like the, going down the rabbit hole of the real dance therapy elements and all of that. But again, you don't have to go that far with it if just like seeing the physical results is enough for you.
Yeah, I didn't know that dance therapy was like an actual thing. I know that a lot of people, including me, wanted to pursue pole dancing to help them, process stuff like, shame, trauma, just get more in tune with your body. But I didn't know it was like a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially this apparatus, or not pole specifically, but apparatus work specifically, I think attracts a lot of people who are needing to express something, whether they know it unconsciously or not. Like people try it like just to try it, but I think more often than not, and we hear this a lot, with our friends sharing how like pole got me through this, or aerial got me through like this really tough season in my life or something like that. It does have therapeutic elements for sure. And tapping into that stuff can be really helpful, not just like for better embodying your movement, but also I personally have gotten a lot of really great inspiration in terms of creating routines and all that kind of stuff, just from listening like to what's in my body and all of that. So it's really fun.
Yeah. Do you have any tips that would help us, tap into those emotions and express ourselves through this movement intention?
Yeah, I do. They're still very, I would say they're still very abstract because I don't coach clients through this a lot. Like I'm mostly in the cross training world.
I guess how you would do it then.
How I would do it. Yeah, that was where I was coming from with it.
Yeah.
Is I really do love that first exercise I was talking about, with just kind of like listening and laying down and kind of seeing like what sort of movements are pre-downloaded in your body. And then the other thing that's super helpful for me, which is not necessarily direct movement, again, because the first thing was laying down, the other thing is journaling and like working through your processes and how you relate to your movement and all of that. There's a really great book that has a lot of prompts. Oh man, the name is escaping me. But it's really great. It's like it's a somatic based book that has a lot of really cool journal prompts and like listen to your body style prompts, things like that.
Yeah, let me know if you remember that. I'll link it.
Yeah, I believe it's called, it's called Finding Ground in an Unstable World. And basically it's about exploring your somatic feedback and emotions and things like that in your body, and like tapping into that and turning it into movement is essentially what it's about. It's really cool.
What's somatic feedback?
Somatic feedback, basically what comes up when you move, what sorts of sensations, and then what sort of emotions do those sensations evoke, and what sorts of feelings about those emotions do those emotions evoke. And like the somatics is like the rabbit hole of
like getting meta.
Like all the things that come up. Yeah, super meta.
What happens if you don't have anything that comes up? I feel like I would lay there and be like, well, now what?
Nothing can be an answer for sure.
What do you do with nothing?
Which is very heady, but I think sometimes, I think in that case, and just bringing it back to like the cross training factor, I think a lot of times we're looking for answers for things. And like, for example, I have clients come to me a lot with problems that they perceive about their body, like little puzzles and stuff, like stuff that doesn't quite make sense to them about their movement, and they think that they need some sort of like exercise to address this problem. So we do the mobility screening. We talk through like what's coming up during the mobility screening. We talk through like other things that are happening with that particular joint that they're struggling with. Nothing. Like nothing's coming up. And it's like, okay, well, maybe nothing is your answer. Like, are you just looking for an exercise or a lift or a drill or something to address this just because you heard, like, you think that you should be doing something for that aspect of things? And it's the same thing with, I think, like inspiration and like tapping into your emotions while you move and all of that. Like if nothing comes up, then nothing comes up, and like you can move on to some sort of different form of inspiration, and that's totally okay. Like nothing can just be your answer. And I think that when nothing comes up, whether it's in like meditation or movement screening or like just any form of like listening to our body, no matter what it is, then we really want to get into, am I just looking for problems? Like, am I just looking for something to address? Because a lot of times when we're doing these movement exercise or these like somatic exercises or meditation exercises, it's a lot of times because we're like working through something and we want to like get past it and move it and use it for inspiration in our movement. But like if nothing's coming up, then you don't need to use that for inspiration.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That nothing can be that answer. I was just thinking about that with myself, and I'm like, maybe it's not a problem.
Totally.
Or at least not a problem in that way.
Yeah. Like I had a coach who I was talking to her about my stress and was like, I feel like I have a lot going on in my life right now, and I'm having a hard time like getting to my training sessions. I do feel pretty tired, and I feel like my brain's pretty burnt out, and like I just feel like I've been moving really fast. And so like, what can I be doing for stress management that's above what I'm already doing? Like I'm going for the walks, I'm like having quiet time, like meditation time, I'm journaling, like what else can I be doing to manage my stress? And she was like, well, like, why do you need to manage your stress? Is it affecting your training? And I was like, no, it's actually not. Like I'm pretty stressed out, but like I'm feeling really good. Like I'm feeling really bendy, I'm feeling really strong, and I'm feeling like my movement is looking how I want it to look on pole. So I guess then, yeah, I'm just like looking for problems and we do that.
Yeah, I think that's a very natural human thing. We're always, just looking for problems so that they'll go away, and that is just making a problem.
Totally. And I think a lot of times I see this a lot in clients is they come to me and they have this list of problems they want to solve. And a lot of times we'll go through the assessment, like they'll start cross training and I'll be like, oh, how is that? It's very trendy right now to say that you have weak glutes, so a lot of people come and they say they have weak glutes or they need to turn on their glutes, things like that. And so we start training and I'm like, how's the glute work going? And they're like, it's really great. Like I'm hip thrusting close to 200 pounds. I feel like my glutes and my hamstrings are like really helping me get my back leg up in my splits. Like I feel good, and I'm like, that's weird because it's only like week 2. And if your glutes were really weak, it would take way longer than this for you to be hip thrusting like that. And so a lot of times we just feel like we have to name these problems in ourselves to just give us something to direct our training. And we feel like, oh, I've heard that this is a problem for most people, so I probably have that. And I'm just going to kind of like borrow that problem and try it on to like help that direct my training, when in fact, you're probably fine. And you just want to get a little bit more like meaning out of your movement. Like you don't have weak glutes. So to bring it back to the embodiment topic, I guess, I think that's what a lot of people are looking to get out of a cross training experience. Like if they're coaching with me, or, you know, learning new moves in the studio, what have you, I think that is essentially what a lot of people are looking to get out of it, is just like finding some sort of meaning to like why they're doing this, and feel like they have something unique to contribute to like the world of performing arts.
Yeah, I really love that visual that you mentioned, that they're just trying on like somebody else's problems for size, seeing if it fits. Do you think that like is more like that problem with their self-confidence, or other things like fear, self-doubt, stuff like that?
I think self-doubt for sure, because in this world, there is not a lot of education on cross training and training in general, and how we should be pushing ourselves. So it is a little bit valid for people to be questioning their training decisions, or to be trying on other people's problems because they feel like they just need direction. Because there's just like such limited research and information. It's getting better for sure, but there's so much limited research and information in the movement arts world in terms of, again, just creating training programs and cross training and conditioning and all of that. So a lot of the self-doubt like is not, it's not, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm going to say disvalid. Oh. Invalid. Thank you. It's not invalid, but a lot of it too is that people struggle with finding direction. And I think that's where a lot of the trying on other people's problems comes from, is because people want someone to kind of use as a sounding board and find some direction in their training, and use something, whatever it may be, as a compass to guide their training and where it's really going. Because I feel like there's so many I know that there's so many options in terms of how we can train, what we can train. Some people only train low flow, no heels, and like that's their specialty. Some people only train dynamic aerial stuff. I'm thinking about like Bethany Finley and people like that. And like, you don't have to do it all. And I think that a lot of times, bringing it back to the trying on other people's problems, is I think that a lot of times that is a direct result of feeling a little bit overwhelmed and just wanting some sort of compass in terms of like, what should I train? What should I cross train? What should I condition? That kind of stuff. And I think that when we read this information online, it feels really good to have that answer and be like, okay, this is where I'm going to start going with things. I need to strengthen my glutes.
Yeah, because the unknown is always way more scary. So it's better to just say, oh yeah, I have a problem with my, wrists or something.
Yeah. Like having something to name and having a language and something tangible that you can say and look at that you need to improve on is really helpful. And sometimes it is true. Like, you do need to work on your wrist mobility or your glute strength, but we always want to ask, why do we think that? Did we just deduce this from some information that was perhaps maybe a little bit fear-mongering online? And so we just said, oh, I must have this? Or have we had these conversations with a coach that we trust? And did we take that information and really like let it marinate and think about if this is actually true for us? Because there is a gray area of like trusting yourself and like trusting your coach, like,
yeah.
It's important to trust the process when you're working with a coach, but also like making your needs known and making it known if something isn't landing or something isn't making sense in terms of their assessment of you is also super important.
Absolutely. And you specialize in cross training and stuff, so how would you use this movement intention like off the pole, like maybe in the gym or warm-ups, cool downs?
Yeah, I love that question, especially because, like I was saying, a lot of people come and say they want to increase their confidence. And a lot of that comes from, again, this concept of like just being able to create tension in your body. And so we use that when we're going through lifts, and especially lifts where a lot of joints are moving. We need to be able to like create stability through the rest of our body so that we can safely move many joints at one time. So that happens really naturally, just with learning to better your lifts. But also the process of going through this and putting your joints and your tissues under a little bit more load is so helpful in terms of being aware of your joints and your tissues, because it's way easier, to like feel your wrist when you're pushing up against a wall than it is to feel your wrist when you're just here. Like I have a basic idea of where all those little bones are lining up in space when my wrist is like this, but I have way more feedback when I'm pushing my flat hand into the wall, and I can really see and feel all those little bones at the end of my wrist connecting to my radius and my ulna and my arm, and all the tissues and tendons and all of that stuff that connect to it. So all of this to say that just the simple act of getting under a little bit more load than you're used to can help so much with propriocepting that area.
So that's the tension part.
Totally. Yeah. And the tension part is really interesting because it's just so helpful for people who maybe haven't trained a lot of proprioception in the past, because that does happen, especially with people who have hypermobile tendencies. Proprioception can be really challenging just to like feel where you are in space. So getting under some load and creating some tension is such a useful tool just in that alone, and just being able to feel and understand and propriocept your body and where you are in space and what certain tissues feel like. And then obviously it helps us a lot in terms of just training strength, the main idea.
Yeah, I love that because I have like very, very little body awareness. So, especially if you're up on the pole and it's like, move your left leg. I'm like, where's my left leg? What is going on here? So, knowing where everything is and how to move it is obviously going to be pretty helpful.
Yeah, for sure. And, it's such a joke. Like there's so many memes about, which arm and like all that stuff. And when you're upside down, it gets a little bit weird. But again, proprioception can be trained. So depending on, like, if you're okay with where you're at with body awareness and all that, and it's not hindering your training, then like, who cares? Whatever. It'll take you an extra second to figure out where your leg is. And if it's not affecting your training, like, it's not a big deal. But if it is affecting your training and you want to change that, really we just need more experience, like being in that position, like being upside down or being in the air, and practicing being aware of where our legs are, which is like such a strange like training recommendation. But again, really the thing that helps us level up our proprioception and our body awareness is just doing the things and getting in the positions that we want to train body awareness and proprioception in, if we don't have the tool of load, which we often don't in the air, because who wants to carry weights up there?
Yeah, I think that's like super helpful. And if there's just one thing you could let, every pole dancer know, what would that be?
I have so many things. Let me think. I would, well, I guess just focusing on the embodiment and the intention concept. My advice to you, if you are seeking any sort of like stage presence or embodiment style goals, just practice moving with more intention. Like, it does feel super strange at first, and you're like, why would I make this harder? Like, why would I just try harder? Like, that's a very strange piece of advice, but it does translate over time, and like, you'll see it over time. Your audience will see it over time. Like, even if it's just one thing that you try, just like having a little bit more awareness and intention around, you're going to recruit more motor units into that movement. And like, it's going to level up how you move. It's going to level up how people perceive you moving. If you care about that, I know not everyone gets on stage, but if you care about that, then it levels that up. And it helps us cross-train better because it just creates more workspace in terms of awareness. So fear not the aspect of just trying to embody things a little bit more, whether it's a certain trick, certain movement, certain combo, a lift, a mobility drill that you really like. I challenge you that before you start like adding load or going into the progression or something like that, just trying a little bit harder and see what happens. Which again, I know it's like such a weird piece of advice, but it totally works. Like,
no, it makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know you have a bunch of like online programs and you've got seasonal intensives coming up to help with things like that. Would you like to let us know a bit more about it?
Yeah. So if you are new to lifting and you've never done it before, and you're interested in cross-training for your pull practice, I have an on-demand program for that. It's called Level Up. And there's an option for more floor-oriented people and an option for more aerial-oriented people. So it really just depends on where you spend more time. If you're more of a low-flow person or an aerial person, there's options for you for that. If you want something that's not self-paced style and you want me to be very like in your face, I offer seasonal intensives. So we are starting registration for that spring session on this coming Monday, which I'm guessing that by the time this comes out, we'll have already done that. So if you're missing out, we also have a summer intensive coming up in June. This one, I do recommend having some lifting experience before you register, just so you don't sign up and then realize that either there's a huge learning curve with you and lifting, or it turns out you don't like lifting at all and you've invested in a cross-training program. That's not fun. So that's a really great option if you want somebody a little bit more like walking you through it. And like I said, a lot of that like discussion and what sort of feedback are you getting, that sort of thing is like very much my coaching style. So if you vibe with that and you want to talk about your movement and what you're getting out of it, what you feel, what you want to feel, all that sort of stuff, I'm for sure your person and you should train with me in the intensive. It's a fun time.
Awesome. And where can I explorers best find you?
I am on Instagram at its.britta. It's Britta. And then my website is athleticartsbybritta.com. And I think that is all my social media at this time. I am on Facebook, but I do have a Facebook page for the company, but no one does Facebook anymore. So
they're amazing. So make sure to go check all that out, guys. And Britta, thank you so much for being our guide on movement intention. And thanks to everyone for tuning in.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Well, we've reached the end of our adventure today. So until next time, remember to stay strong, keep pushing your limits, and embrace your individual journey.
Don't forget to grab your free access to the Pole Adventures Compendium, a collection of incredible resources to help you progress on your pole journey. And if you enjoyed today's adventure, make sure to leave a review so other explorers can embark on the journey with us. This is the Pole Adventures podcast, and your next adventure awaits.